Well, hello, Sandra. Welcome.
Hi, Miss Myrna. I am so excited to talk to you this afternoon.
And I'm thrilled to get to talk to you too. I don't get to talk to you enough. And I just want to introduce you. Sandra is a friend of mine. She's my sister friend, even. And we've been connected a long time. And one of the things the thing we're going to talk about is the content of her book, Building Community, a memoir and a conversation starter, which it is. And Sandra, you share this so well about how we connected and all of that. So can you share that?
Yeah, no, happy to. So I have known Myrna, I have known you since probably when I was in 8th grade, going into high school, which was, I don't know, yesterday or something. It's been a day or two that that we have known each other. But my family moved to a small town in Oklahoma, and your family was members of the church that we chose to go to. And along the way, somehow I kind of became adopted by your family. And whenever I explain to people my relationship to your parents, I tell them that Lewis and Frances were my not legally adopted parents.
I like that.
I actually tried to say that when I was on stage one time, and I said that they were my parents in every sense of the word, except they weren't involved in my birth. And I got this huge laugh from the audience, and I was like, well, I didn't. Anyway, it was an unexpected laugh, but that really is kind of where it's at. So you were older than me by, I think we've said 5 or 6 years,
I
right?
think so. I think
So whenever
so.
I was going into high school, you were going into college.
Mhm.
So there, while I was connecting with your family as such, you were out starting to conquer the world and find your own way and all of that. And so, we see each other on holidays and at different times like that, family gatherings and different times like that. But we kind of reconnected
Right.
several years ago because of social media and because of Facebook. And particularly, we'd see little bits here and there. I'm doing this, you're doing this kind of a thing. But whenever your biological father, my not legally adopted father, whenever Lewis really started to ail and come to the end of his life, you were so incredibly transparent that then it kind of re-energized our relationship and just a little bit stronger at that point.
Yes, and I so appreciate that. As parents pass on, we need more family in our lives because there's a big piece missing. And one of the things, it's kind of interesting because we're both fans of each other, and I love that. And when I guess I'll tell this story. When my dad did die, I called, or Dan called and let you know, and then you called me back. And it was an interesting thing because this is not something I do very often, but I just had this huge push inside me to say that I thought you should write a book.
Yep.
And some crazy things happened right after that.
Yeah, whenever I have told people the story of how this first book, that was my first book, of how the Building Community book came together, I tell them that you spoke it into being, because really there were a lot of things that were happening in my life at that point that when I look back, I can see it's one of those things go, oh, I see how this lined up with this and this and this and this whole series of events that was occurring. But it really was at no point in my mind did I have that there was going to be a book involved in it. And then you said that, and then the wheels really, just came off I was cruising at that point. Yeah.
And I kind of think God had a little bit of hand in that too, don't you?
Oh, as I tell people the story of the first book, I jokingly said along the way that the second book was going to be called God Moments. And it was going to be all about the first book because there were, I mean, event after event, person after person who came into my life who helped me get this idea, this concept that I had in my mind to the book that you just held up a few moments ago. How that happened from point A to point Z was just, I think I say in either this book or the God Moments book, I say that it was like God was orchestrating this whole thing, and I had no clue that was going to happen. And sometimes I think that you just have to ride the wave, and that was really what happened with that first book and the second book and third book. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that. I just want to say real quick so people know, you wrote this book, and then you wrote a second, and then you wrote a third, all in a very short period of time.
I did. I wrote and released 3 books in 2 years.
Yeah.
Which were my first 3 books in 2 years. That was, I was kind of creatively drained at the end of that, but what an experience. I mean, it was awesome.
Well, and when I got to read this book before she published it, and when I read it, Sandra, I knew kind of how your life went, but I really didn't understand really how alone you were as a parent for much of the time that you've been raising your kids. And I was so amazed at the things you did to build community and the different aspects. And can you talk a little bit about that, the chapters in the book and how you build community?
Oh yeah, no. So there were a lot of things that were going on. In I don't tend to sit still a lot. So there were a lot of things that were going on in my life, but there were a couple of things that were very instrumental in my kind of fleshing out this concept of how we build community with one another. Okay. So one of those was that I started doing some on-stage storytelling. And I won't get into all the details about that, but basically it's a format where I can get up on stage with other people on a given evening, and all of the stories are based around a certain topic. And it's open mic, so you throw your name in a hat, you get your name drawn out, you tell a story. At the end of the night, they crown a champion. But I started doing that because it was a creative outlet for me, and it kind of met a few of my needs to have me time and to talk to adults. And things like that, whether there was a microphone involved or not, talking to adults was a good thing. So, but what started happening was that every single time that I got up on stage and I would tell a story, the coolest things weren't happening on stage. It didn't matter if I was crown champion or not, or whatever. What was happening was when I came off of the stage, and when people would come up to me and say, "Let me tell you how I connected with your story." So it was, I was very careful with the title of this book because it is Building Community, a memoir, which suggests that it's my stories, a conversation starter. So I started to see how that would play, how that was working and how that would play out. So it's, you talk about these things kind of coming to fruition. The seed was kind of planted in the back of my mind, and it was just germinating and being fed as I had more opportunities to share my stories with people. And then I was also, I love a good girls' night out. Okay.
Yeah.
GNOs, I am all about GNOs. So I was hosting people in my home. And every night, because I love to entertain, I would kind of go all in. And so there would be themes for the gatherings and all of those. But there was quite often opportunities, and some of it was planned, and some of it, probably 98% of it, was incredibly spontaneous. But it was how we were connecting when we came together. And I mean, it was just so open and honest, and we all started to kind of support each other and, all of that. So it was all of these different things were happening that were kind of giving me a glimpse at how we build community with each other. At the same time, I moved from the house that I had lived in for 16 years to a totally different part of the city, a totally different community and all of that. You talk about being lonely. In the house 16 years, I could tell you what people were having for dinner because of my neighbors, because we all knew each other and we all, connected and all of that. And then I moved to a part of town where I knew nobody. And so I would walk out and nobody would greet me. And, it was all about. So all of these things were coming into play. And then there were a series of events that happened that were just absolutely life altering and life changing that kind of brought it all together into this work that I was able to put together. But the 10 chapters in the book are talked about. I talk about 10 different ways that we build community with one another. And we all know that we have gifts and talents in different areas and that kind of thing. For me, it's hospitality. Love hosting parties, love hosting gatherings, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of other kind of more subtle ways that you have to really think about how you are building community with one another. The first chapter, which, by the way, if anybody cares, the first chapter is about Myrna, and is which kind of started this whole conversation. The first chapter, if you think of this, was late 2017, early 2018 that I was starting this book, right? There was so much that was going on social media that was, and still to this day, that is so negative, and it's so polarizing, and it is so political at times, and it's so opinionated. I mean, being flooded with all of that. And in the middle of that, I would come across these posts that were from you, that were so sincere and so transparent. And so you really, really honestly, through social media, you allowed me and many other people to walk with you that journey of saying goodbye to Lewis.
Oh,
I mean, really honestly, you took us on that journey with you. And I looked at how you were using social media in ways that were so very different from how other people were using social media. And it led me to kind of think about, we have to be intentional with our words, and we have to be intentional with what we're putting out there. And we have to be intentional about how we are bringing people into our lives so that we can make connections, so that we can build true, honest, genuine community with each other. And on social media, you are like the rock star. I mean, you are the Beyonce of social media, right?
Yeah.
In doing that. I mean, I just am in awe of how you do that.
Thank you so much. That is so awesome. And I remember.
Let me tell the people who are hearing this, she did not pay me a penny for that. There was no anything. That is very sincere.
I was blown away when I first read through your book before you published it, that you had been watching and that you had been connecting with me through that. And I really had no idea. And so it really was encouraging, and it's very intentional what I do. I think for direct sales and network marketing people, we have to build that know, like, and trust factor with other people, but so do you.
Right.
It's part of building community. It is just part of getting to know each other and valuing each other. And I think that sometimes people think if they ask these questions on social media to start a conversation, they're being shallow or something like that. But you gotta start somewhere.
No, you do, and you put it out there. I think sometimes when people put out these questions and they're meant to be conversation starters and whatever, sometimes I want to see people kind of upfront say, I was thinking the other day about, or I was having a picnic with my family, and we were eating ice cream, and I had my favorite ice cream, which is mint chocolate chip, cookies and cream, whatever it is. Cinnamon. Cinnamon would be my answer to that story. I'm sorry, rookie mistake. I have my phone on. Okay. But and then you put the question out there. So, what is your favorite ice cream or whatever? So, putting it out there, being a conversation starter or replying in the comments, you are incredibly good about that. You put out there, what is your favorite ice cream? And then you come back and every single person who answers, you come back and respond, and you use it as a conversation starter. And
Most
if somebody looks at what is your favorite ice cream and they see that as being shallow, if you back it up and if you start to build those relationships, and if it becomes more than just a conversation about ice cream, that's when it's not shallow, and that's when it takes the turn, and that's really when you can start. But you have to start somewhere that people are comfortable.
right, exactly.
And that's what makes it powerful.
Right. So you have to start at the most outer layer of the onion to start a conversation. Because if I ask you, if I'm a stranger and I run into you in the store and I ask you how many kids do you have, you're going to right away say, "Oh, this is a creep."
Right. Exactly.
I got to take care of my kids.
Right.
And so it's really important. And we'll talk some more about social media, but I wondered if you could talk about the 10 ways. Do you want to talk about the 10 ways that you built community?
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. Let's talk about the 10 ways that I suggest that people can build community. So, like I said, each chapter kind of talks about it, and all I do is I put my stories out there about how I have seen this happen, or how I personally have experienced this happening, and whatever. I had to put my glasses on for 2 seconds. Sorry. So the first chapter is about being intentional. The second chapter is about being hospitable. That's where, those are my stories of having my girls' night out parties, that kind of thing. One chapter is on being transparent. One of the things, whenever I get up on stage and I do this storytelling, one of the rules of the game is that the stories have to be true. I mean, they absolutely have to be true. And we can tell. I mean, we can tell when somebody's up on stage and they have made this story up, or they're kind of adding some stuff to it and whatever. So you have to be transparent in what you're doing. Again, your journey with Lewis and whatever, it was oozing with transparency, because sometimes you would post a memory about your mom or whatever, and then some days the posts were literally, "I am having a hard time today," period. And that was it. And we needed to know that. But anyway, we built community through being transparent. There's a chapter in there on being supportive of one another. There are times where I can be the cheerleader because I know that you're having a down day, or you're having a bad time, or whatever. There are times where I need somebody else to pick up the pom-poms and to be the cheerleader, and we need to be honest about those days. But we also need to understand sometimes it's really just saying, "I see you over there. I
Yeah.
see you over there. I know that you have a gazillion things on your plate, and I just want to tell you that you're a rock star because you are handling those gazillion things as best as anybody can." Okay. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's more than that. But anyway, being supportive with people is a big part of it. A huge one in here is this concept of being aware of what is going on around us, and being aware of what is going on in people's lives. The story that I tell in that chapter is I have two very good friends who both of them have health concerns. One has a very, very, very rare disease, and I have known them for years. And I watched Steve and Leslie go through this physical journey that they've been on. And every single time that I would see them, it would be, "Hey, how are you, Leslie?" It goes, "Oh, we're good. We're good." Always. I mean, they could have been struggling, and certainly were struggling as much as you can, but, "Oh, we're good." They were always so incredibly positive, until one day, slightly after Christmas, I saw Leslie in a local pharmacy, And I said, Leslie, how are you? And, I thought it was going to be, oh, I'm good. And I would walk out the door. And Leslie said, I'm tired. That was the first time that I ever heard this woman tell me that she was tired. And it was a turning point. It was a huge turning point for me and for her, because it was her way of reaching out and saying, I have reached the end of my rope.
Yep.
And so, I had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to help them at that point with the help of the community, because all I did was say, hey, they need some help, and then many people jumped in to help. But you have to be aware of what is going on in people's lives and those little red flags that say something has shifted, and they may need me a little bit more right now. I think you have to be aware of that.
And I think you listened there. A lot of us might not have heard that.
Oh, no,
that's really key.
Yep, no, absolutely. One of the chapters is on being social. I have no problem with that. You have no problem with that, right? but for some people, being social means just putting yourself out there, and because you're not going to be able to engage with people until you do that. I mean, it's just really that simple. There's accepting. And for me, that was really, that whole serenity prayer, accept the things I can, and all of that, which I can't quote directly at the moment, but that's okay. But you know what I'm talking about,
right? Yes, I do.
there are some things that that I am never going to change, right? And I have to accept that. But then there are also times where I have to say, I'm going to put my energy here because it's important to me right now. And I have to kind of let one or two other things kind of simmer on the back burner because those things aren't as important to me right now. So it's kind of, it's really accepting what you can do and what you can't do, and things like that. Being motivated is one of the chapters that I have in this book, because I think that there's going to be something that sparks you and gives you energy to follow your dream, or to follow through with, you may be exhausted at the end of the day, but you still have to do a couple of things. It's finding whatever it is that motivates you to build that community. So motivation is huge. And then, I end the last chapter, I end on being grateful. And I name several people in that book who and it was kind of the people who helped me through get the book up off the ground, a few others. But really, honestly, taking the time to be grateful for the people that are in our lives that help us get from point A to point B, right? Or point A to point T, whatever the case may be. But just being grateful for the resources that we have and the people that are in our lives. And for me, it's incredible. I'm an incredible woman of faith. And so being grateful to God for all of the opportunities that he has given to me. And then, so that's kind of my take on what it takes to build community with people.
It really is. And the interesting thing, well, it should be no surprise really, is that, we've been 2 years through this pandemic, and you continued to build community. You continue, and I know that you just can't stop, because it's who you are and you're very intentional about it. But you arranged several Zoom things with your friends and played games online, and just did a lot of things to make it easier for them and for you during this time.
No, I appreciate that. Part of that, there was a big part of that, which was me having to move out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I still to this day think that the VCR is the highest level of technology that and really, y'all didn't see the first 10 minutes of what we were doing to get this right, to get this interview going, kind of thinking it was like, Sandra, do this. Sandra, can you leave and come back in, because whatever. But so this whole doing Zoom thing, and I will say in some ways Zoom and being online worked, but it really was when I brought it down to one key goal, which was just to make sure that I could check in with people. and kind of become a little bit of a lifeline for people to do that. There are some things that don't translate well on Zoom, and we would much rather do them in person. But
Right.
it's kind of understanding the tools that you have at your hand, the tools that you have at hand, and how you're going to use them well. And again, it's understanding what our strengths and our weaknesses are. For me, it's hospitality. I found there were a few close friends who we said early on in the pandemic, this is going to be our pod. And I haven't called the Guinness World Book of Records yet, but I'm pretty sure that I set the record for how many hands of cards you could play in a year. But it really came down to that same basic structure of, even if it's just a few people in the room, showing hospitality to people online over a deck of cards or whatever kind of thing, showing hospitality to them, listening to what they were saying, everybody was scared. Everybody was isolated. Everybody was trying to shift gears in the midst of all of the changes that were going on over the past 2 years and still continue to go on, right?
Right.
So it was really just a matter of kind of slowing down and all of these things, being intentional, being transparent. I didn't have to carry the pom-poms for 2 years. I tried. I will tell you, there were times where whenever I said, I don't have the pom-poms today, people, somebody else is going to have to pick up the pom-poms. That was the red flag to say I had reached my end and I needed a little bit more support. People jumped in and did that, whatever. But it's really the same basic 10 factors.
Right. And it really does take intentionality on all fronts when you're building community. And the thing is, we in business, we look at building community as a step we have to take to build our business. And it is, but as human beings, it's a step we should be taking regardless. And so if we
I get I'm sorry, not to cut you off. You have to think of it too. I think in terms of the fact that it's not one step, it's not one and done.
No, it's not.
Right, because you're constantly building community. Either you're bringing more people into the community, right? You're increasing your sales, you're building your business and all of that. But it's also nurturing those relationships that you make along the way.
Exactly, and keeping those. Yep. And that can be a challenge at times for people, I think, as they build their business and it grows and things. So yeah, and the more I've been listening to a book about connecting and communicating, and the more I realize it's just so integral to everything we need to do. Yep. And so I really appreciate that you took the time to write this book and to include me in it. And
the one thing that I wrote, and I'm pretty sure in the chapter on social media, I know it is you have to think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, because either for me, and it's really a very simple formula, then maybe two parts to it. One would be either you're building community or you're not.
Exactly.
Right, one way or the other. On social media, particularly, either you are building community or you're bashing community. And I have found very few things in between.
Right? And I agree completely with you on that, because it just is what happens, and or how people talk or respond. And we didn't talk about this part, but when you're sitting behind a screen and you're not looking at anyone, it's so easy to type something that is really hurtful or very divisive. Right. And it takes a lot of intentionality to be positive. And this was something I guess I wanted to share too, to choose not to. We have to choose to, and we have to choose not to. And right. So I totally go with build community. Do not choose to not build community, because if you're not, you're tearing people down.
Right. It really is one way or the other. I have kind of adopted, and actually it's this is not a plug, but it is. My but it makes a point. My website, whenever I had to, sit down and figure out how people were going to find me and what name I was going to use for the website, whatever, I really kept it very simple. And it's the number 2, buildcommunity.com. So 2buildcommunity.com. And for me, I tell people that and it's true that I did this because I constantly asked myself, is what I am doing to build community with people? Period. Am I doing that? Is this action, is what I write, is what I say on stage or anywhere else, is what I am doing? I don't know if my grammar is correct there, but whatever, my English is correct. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I constantly ask myself, what I am doing, is it building community with other people? Right. Okay. Is it to build community with other people? This is so unrehearsed. This is so unrehearsed. It's not even funny. I think it's a constant question that we ask ourselves. And if we keep that in front of us, it's almost like a few years ago, the WWJD was huge.
Right.
Okay. But what would you put something in front of you that reminds you of the importance of building community? And for me, that's kind of what it is.
And I totally agree with that. I think it is so important. And we have so much negativity in our lives already that we need to be part of the light, part of the positivity, part of building. And so, yeah, and I totally agree with you.
And it really a lot of it boils down to this old, if you build it, they will come. Right?
It does.
So if you are intentional about building community, and if you are intentional about being transparent with people, and you're aware of the needs, all of those things that we talked about, if you are intentional about doing that, and you're intentional about building community, people will come, because people want to be around people who are building community.
Right. They do. They feel welcome. They feel nurtured.
Yep.
And that's what people need. We all need that. So,
so exactly.
Yeah. So I'm going to shamelessly plug you. So because I really appreciate you taking the time now I can't talk, to do this interview with me and talk about community. And she's got 3 books out, you guys. This is the first one. She does a blog. Is it weekly or monthly?
I do a weekly blog.
A weekly blog, and they're always right on point. And so it's tobuildcommunity.com, right? Sandra Combs. I didn't see your last name at the beginning. I just said Sandra.
Okay. Yeah. Sandra Combs, and if you go to that website, then you'll see my blog. You'll see the 3 books that are out there, working on 4. The 4th one is on this concept of how we find balance in an unbalanced world. And I've been sitting on this and chewing on this one for a little while, but we're there. We are there. It's kind of I don't know. I say I'm the least qualified person to talk about that, but maybe I'll learn along with everybody else. I don't know. So good.
I don't know. The interesting thing is that we're always learning and changing. And for instance, I'll give an example of that because I think it fits with this subject. You are a planner to the T. You love to organize. You are just amazing at that. And she came to visit me recently, and she let go of the planning. And that to me was a big step. It was a huge step. And so I think as we get moments away from high school, more moments away, then we learn more, and we become better and or different, and we change to meet our need and to enjoy life.
Yeah. Well, and I needed to be in a different zip code. I needed to get away. I needed to have a few days away. And you were very gracious enough to, if you will, pick up the pom-poms and take the lead. And no, it turned out to be exactly what I needed it to be, but really, any time that I can be in conversation with you, whether it's on Zoom or in person, or even just reading what you're doing on Facebook, it's always exactly what I need.
Oh, that's awesome. And we both, I think we feed off each other. I need that energy that you have and things. And I really appreciate it. So,
Sure. Oh,
but yeah.
my pleasure. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Sandra. And we will be talking again soon.
Okay. Love you, Frister.
Love you too.